Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheila with another story for you. Our story today is called Multiple Miracles. Goodbye. Bye. And everybody in the station wagon had waved. Suzanne, she said, Mom, I wish we could have stayed for the rest of the basketball game. Dawn said, yeah, that would have been nice. But the junior senior fundraiser program was wonderful. I'm glad we got to see all of that. And it was so nice to see Sis. Well, Mother agreed. Gordon, he was sitting in the front seat, and he was sitting there thinking how nice it was of Mrs. Grant that she had offered to take him with her two daughters to the academy for the junior senior weekend. He had had such a good time being with his brother. Now that he was gone to academy, he didn't see him too often. The car settled down into silence. It was late, and they had a long ways to go to get home. Mother, she was busily driving along into that darkness. And it started to rain. The wipers went swish, 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 back and forth and back and forth. But after a long time of driving, and the girls both asleep, Mother turned to Gordon and said, would you be willing to take the wheel for a little while? I'm getting awfully tired. Well, Gordon agreed. So they stopped on the side of the road, and Gordon, he jumped out, and Mom scooted over into the middle because Suzanne was sleeping against the passenger door. And Gordon, he started to drive, and Mother put her head over onto Suzanne's shoulder, and soon she was asleep. All was silent in the car. Before Mother had gone to sleep, she had turned to Gordon and she said, now, it's pretty wet out here. I've noticed that when we hit puddles, the car tends to pull to the right. Please watch your speed. Don't go fast. And Gordon had agreed. Gordon was driving along and the road started to get bad. But he thought, I've driven on worse roads than this. And worse weather than this, too. Well, as he kept driving along, the roads got wetter and wetter. And he noticed when he looked to the side of the road, this wasn't a big freeway, this was one of those hometown roads. And he noticed that the edge of the road was just non-existent now. It was like it just went over and he couldn't, almost in the dark, he couldn't tell where the edge of the road was. So he kept watching that line down the center of the middle of the road, and he kept driving along, and all of a sudden, it happened. The car started to slide. He tried to steer it back up onto the road. He tried to put on the brakes, but everything was happening too fast. The more he tried to turn that wheel toward the road, the more that car started to slide. Soon, there were two wheels off the side of the road, and the car was still going. He tried to make it stop, but it was too muddy, and he was going down over the embankment, and suddenly, Mom was awake, and Suzanne was awake. And right in front of them was a humongous pile of rocks, and they were heading right toward it. Gordon, he swerved just in time to miss that huge pile of rocks. But then something even worse happened. Their car, that station wagon, went airborne. Off into the air they flew. And then there was a huge ditch. They could see it from the lights of the car, and that airborne car hit the side of that ditch and landed right in this big waterway. When the car went with a thud to a stop, Gordon, he couldn't believe it, and then suddenly he looked around and he said, "How did I get in the back seat?" He had been driving. And Dawn, she woke up and she said, "I have no idea." She didn't even know really what had happened. Then Dawn looked up and she said, "I would like to know how we got sitting on the ceiling of the car." And they all looked around. Gordon, I think all of them were in shock. They were sitting on the top of inside the roof of the car, and the seats and everything were up above them. Suzanne, she said, what can we do? What should we do? And Mom said, "I think we need to get out of this car as quick as we can. Do you hear that water rushing around the outside of the car?" They all listened. And then Dawn, she reached over and she grabbed the car door and she opened the car door about this far, and in rushed water. Oh, she tried to push that door shut, and her mom said, "Don't shut it. That's our only way out. The doors up here are blocked." Well, Gordon, he scooted over and he pushed on that door, and he helped push Dawn out into that water. He said, "Grab the door handle. Grab the door handle outside." And she did. That water was just rushing by, and she held on as tight as she could. And she looked around in the darkness, and she realized she needed to get around the front end of that car and still hold on and then go up the bank. Mom and Suzanne, they were having trouble getting to the back of the car. And Gordon, he looked up at Mrs. Grant, and she had a big cut above her eyes. It was dripping blood down the side of her face. He finally got Suzanne to the door, and he was able to push her out through the crack, which was as big as they could get the door open. And she was taking a long time. And Mom said, "Suzanne, you have to hurry. The car's filling up with water. Hurry." And she scooted around the door, wiggling her way, holding on to anything she could hold on to. And then Mom went out, and Gordon was last to go out. And finally, all of them were climbing up that muddy bank. That ditch, Mom knew that ditch from seeing it in the daytime. It was an actual waterway, and in places it was 20 to 30 feet deep of water. Well, all of them got out on that mud. Mother didn't have any shoes on and she had blood running down her face. Nobody had any coats on, and they were covered from head to toe with mud. When Mom saw headlights up on the road, she said, "Kids, run! Go stop that car!" Well, Gordon and the girls got up and they started to run, and Gordon realized that all the time he'd been driving, he hadn't seen another car on this road. He knew that this might be their only chance for help. So he pushed himself as hard as he could up that embankment, up to the side of the road, and he got there just when that car was coming right toward them. And the two girls got there, and they all started trying to flag down that car. "Stop! Stop!" Well, the man driving the car saw those three children, teenagers, standing on the side of the road, and he pulled to a stop, and he jumped out of his car into the rain. And by this time, Mother had climbed to the bank, and he looked at those mud-encased kids, and the mother with blood running down her face and no shoes on, and he said, "What happened?" They said, "We had an accident, our car's down there." And he said, "Come on, I'll take you to the next town." And they got in, and while they were going, they all contributed to telling the story of what had happened. And the man looked at them in amazement. He said, "It's amazing that you're even alive." Well, when they got to the town, they went directly to the police department. And the police officer, he was amazed. He said, "You guys don't know." Oh, and then he said, "Whoever was driving, I need to take you back to the accident so that you can tell me all the details from there." Well, poor Gordon, he was exhausted, but he trudged after that officer, and the receptionist at the police station wrapped the other three in blankets, and Gordon rode in the police car back to where he had gone off the road. The police officer, he got out his spotlight and he shone it on the car, and he said, "This is amazing." And Gordon told him all the rest of the details, and it wasn't too long till they were back to the police station. And he turned to Mom and he said, "Ma'am, do you know what I think? You all should have been still trapped in that car, and you wouldn't have lived to tell about it." Mother, oh, she was so thankful. When they finally were delivered to their home, the girls said, "Mom, it had to be God did a miracle. It had to be." Well, they all went back to the scene of that accident, and they saw their totally wrecked car. They saw the water in that huge waterway. And while they were standing there, Mother had gone over. The car had been pulled up out of there. And on their way, Dawn had asked, "Mom, you don't have your glasses. Where's your purse?" And Mom said, "I guess they got lost with our coats in the accident. They probably all floated away." But when they had gotten to that car, Mom crawled in And she shouted, "Here's my glasses, and they aren't broken. And my purse is still here. It's covered with mud." But when she opened it, nothing inside, including her uncashed paycheck. They were all there safely. The coats, now that was a different story. The coats were caked with mud. Now, Mother looked at them, and I'm imagining that maybe that mud was red mud, because Mother said, "There's no way these are going to even be wearable again." But they gathered everything out of that car and they went back home. Mother, she put those coats and all that stuff that was washable in the wash machine. And she washed them several times. And what came out was totally amazing. Dawn's coat had a white trim around the hood. And even the white trim was beautiful and white again. All the coats looked like they were spotlessly clean and brand new again. It's a miracle. And Mom said, it's multiple miracles, multiple small and big miracles. Look at it, girls. God saved our lives. God let us get out of that car. God even saved my check. It wasn't ruined. And my glasses are still whole. One miracle after the other. Boys and girls, our God is constantly doing miracles for us. We may not even have time to pray and ask, but He still helps. And you know, He's going to do miracles for you when you're in need as well. Thank you, boys and girls, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.